Hello and welcome to your last set of notes on the special senses. This set is on your sense of taste and smell. Your taste and your smell both use what we call chemoreceptors instead of mechanoreceptors, as we saw with your hearing and balance. So that means that they are mucous membranes and the chemicals are dissolved in the mucus, and that's how they are interpreted and information sent to the brain. There's a depolarization based on the presence of different chemicals. Your taste has four classic. There's actually, now there are 5. And we'll talk about the last one, the newest one. Different types of receptors for different flavors. And your smell also quite sensitive to different chemicals. These senses complement each other and respond to the same stimuli, and that can be easily detected when you have a cold. Your nasal passages are stuffy, your sense of taste is still fully functional, and yet it's still difficult to taste many foods because so much of your sense of taste is related to also your ability to smell the foods. Your olfactory sense, the function is to detect and perceive chemicals. Those might include chemicals of something that's dangerous, or chemicals like pheromones of the opposite sex, which has a relationship to your sex drive. So all of these things have responses that are embedded basically in your limbic system. We'll talk about that a little later. Your olfactory receptors are in that cribriform plate. You'll see this in your labeling, the roof of the nasal cavity, and the neurons then go up into that cribriform plate of the ethmoid bone. So maybe you remember those. The neurons themselves are also hair-like, so they have cilia. And then again, the chemicals need to be dissolved in the mucus in order for detection to occur. And then so you have an olfactory tract that goes through your olfactory nerve. And then if you remember from our study of the brain, the interpretation of the smells is made in the temporal lobe. The olfactory nerve is your cranial nerve number 1. Oops, that's not the pen. Cranial. And if you remember from the sheep brain, we had that those olfactory bulbs that are at the front end of your brain. They're actually connected to the temporal lobe, but they stick out underneath the frontal lobe. Ours are not as big as the sheep's, obviously. Our interpretation of smells is actually something we can adjust. And so if you're someone who is like a wine or coffee or tea connoisseur, your sense of smell for some particular smells, you can actually enhance your ability in your sense of olfaction. So it is something that is somewhat trainable. Here is the labeling that you need to do for your nasal passages. Here, for example, this is the ethmoid bone, the cribriform plate, and it's shown again right here. I'll let you just fill that in, and then, so pause the video and then move on to the next slide. This is the part about your olfactory system being closely tied to your limbic system. So you actually, when you sense a smell, an interpretation of that odor occurs and is stored. It's like a snapshot. And remember, your limbic system is your emotional, visceral part of your brain. So, for example, maybe chocolate chip cookies remind you of your grandmother's house, or some kind of tobacco might remind you of your dad, or there's baby smells, there's hospital smells. All these things are reactions, are because of this connection to our limbic system. Our olfactory receptors also have the ability to adapt. So, for example, you smell something, and you'll definitely see this when we do more dissections, right? You smell it when you first come in, and then after a couple minutes, you don't smell it anymore. But if you left and then came back, you'd be able to smell it again. Okay, your sense of taste. The word taste, your textbook says, comes from a Latin word, taxere. I think that's how it's pronounced, which means to touch, estimate, or judge. So it's basically like making a judgment. When you sense something, taste, you make a judgment about whether it's good for you or not. And that's because one of the functions is to identify things that are bad for you. And another one is to identify things that your body might be needing. Your taste buds are where you house receptor organs. You can see that down here. You have taste buds mostly on your tongue, but some are in your soft palate, and some are also in your cheeks. These two tonsils that we're labeling here, the palatine and the lingual tonsil, are actually part of your lymph system. So that's related to your immune system, lymph tissue. This is a picture of two of the three kinds of papillae or bumps you have on your tongue. We're going to see those next. So these are the two that are related to your sense of taste. The fungiform papillae and the circumvallate papillae. Okay, so here are the three kinds of projections that are called papillae. The first one, the filiform papillae, these are just an abrasive coating. And if you look close on your tongue, you'll see that they're sort of whitish. They're really recognizable in cats. They're heavily keratinized. If you've ever been licked by a cat, you know that scratchy feeling. So again, the two that are deal with taste are the fungiform papillae, which are they're reddish. They are mostly on the tip of your tongue and the sides of your tongue. They're sort of rounded with taste buds on them. And then you have the larger ones that are in the sort of back of your tongue, and the taste buds themselves are found on the sides of the papillae. We'll see that, or we did see that in the previous picture. There's a little indentation with the taste buds on the inside of the papillae. Okay. The actual cells that are the receptors that respond to the chemicals that are dissolved in your saliva, right, are called gustatory cells, and they are epithelial. So we could add in here, they're epithelial cells, and again they have hairs that are called microvilli, and you'll see that in the next picture. And then, of course, again, the chemicals have to be dissolved in the mucus and the saliva in order for that to get into the taste pores. those microvilli are stimulated like a nerve, and they depolarize, and then the impulses are transmitted to your brain. There are these three nerves, the facial nerve, the glossopharyngeal, and the vagus nerve, that are involved with your sense of taste. The facial nerve serves the anterior part of the tongue. And the glossopharyngeal and vagus nerves serve the other taste bud containing areas. So these are your nerves. 7 is the facial nerve. Glossopharyngeal goes to through your throat. That's number 9. And your vagus nerve serves your heart, your lungs, and your digestive tract. So I'm guessing this is number 10, and it goes to your digestive tract. So there's a response. These actually have sensory and motor nerve fibers, the glossopharyngeal and the vagus. So you have responses to the stimulus. So there's a motor tract and a sensory that is from your throat, in the back of your mouth, and from your digestive tract. So that's kind of interesting. Okay, this is just the rest of your labeling there of the cellular level over here, of the gustatory hairs and your taste buds. Let's see which ones these are. Yeah, so here's the taste buds. This is on the circumvallate papillae, which are back here. And so these right here are these little gustatory hairs and the gustatory cells themselves. And then the nerve fibers there. Okay. Okay, your taste sensations. Having likes and dislikes, of course, are going to have some kind of homeostatic value. So if you have an affinity for sugar and or salt, that's going to satisfy your need for carbohydrates, the sweet receptors here, sugars, saccharin, some amino acids, for carbohydrates, simple sugars, right? And also for specific minerals, which you need, like for salty, right? You have metal ions that you need that are electrolytes. Electrolytes. Sour foods are typically rich in sources like vitamin C, so that may be why we have an affinity for sour flavors. Vitamin C. Many poisons and spoiled foods taste bitter. These are alkaloids. They're alkaline. And so these receptors may be more protective rather than appreciative. That's because of their poisons, spoiled food. And there's a new 5th one that has been recognized now, starting in 1985, which is the year before I graduated from high school, so that's not that long ago. And that's called umami. And those are more savory. They're actually more things that enhance the other receptors. So that includes things like glutamates and nucleotides. So, for example, MSG. These are flavors like soy sauce, savory, and those have now been recognized as a 5th taste sensation. There's one last thing to say about your taste sensations, and that is, again, related to how it's connected with your nasal, your sense of smell, and also things like texture, And temperature of foods can influence our likes or dislikes of them. And we also have pain receptors in our tongue. So hot chili peppers can excite those pain receptors in your mouth. And all those things are involved in your sense of taste. So again, they're not working in isolation. They're working in combination with your other senses. Okay, the last part are developmental aspects, and I think we're going to focus mostly on our eyes. All of your senses are formed early in embryonic development. Your eyes are direct outgrowths of your brain, and so these are developing by the 4th week of embryonic development. And all of your special senses are functional to some degree, either more enhanced or less enhanced at birth. So like your sense of taste is really sensitive. That's why kids tend to not like spicy, super flavorful foods. Our eyes is the only sense that's not fully functional at birth. Babies are nearsighted. And their cones are not fully developed, so babies can't see things far away, and they don't see in color very well. And also their lacrimal glands aren't fully developed, so they can cry, but they don't form tears until they're about 2 weeks old. This is straight out of your textbook, by the way, about 5 months of age. They can see things within reach, but by the time they're 5, they are almost have what we call I can't pronounce it, emetropia. Emetropia is sort of full vision. Emetropia. So that's normal adult vision. Hyperotropia is what babies have. Babies up to age 5. Let's see. And then when you start to get old, like you can hear me complaining about, you start getting what we call presbyopia. And that's about age 40, and that's where you start to get farsighted. So that's farsighted. This is nearsighted. And the reason for that is that the lens elasticity decreases, and not just the lens, but also the things that stretch the lens start to wear out. Also, as you age, your lacrimal glands become less active, and your eyes become dry, and you're vulnerable to bacterial infection. Your pupils don't constrict as well, and your visual acuity is dramatically lower by the time you're 70. So your eyes are not things that last until you're 100. That's the point of that. Okay, that is the end of the notes for taste and smell, and the end of our notes on special senses. So there you have it.